So I am Satoshee with double E. I'm called Satoshee with double E at the end, and I work with Africa Free Routing and African Bitcoiners. And yeah, we're going to talk about this today. So oftentimes, Bitcoin adoption talks usually happen, in a few familiar places, and amongst people who already agree with each other. But like over the past year, through the bootcamps we do at Africa Free Routing and African Bitcoiners, I'm able to quickly learn that the conversations are very different, when you escape those bubbles. So today, I want to share a few observations, not theories, about what happens when you take Bitcoin beyond Lagos and Nairobi, in quotes, to places where assumptions break and the reality humbles you very quickly. So last year, I spoke at a meetup, and during the Q&A session, one young man raised his hand and he said, "Thank you, I finally understand Bitcoin." And I was surprised because he wasn't new, and I've seen him before, and like he has watched, according to him, some YouTube videos and heard some very intelligent people speak about Bitcoin. And I didn't do anything special. All I did was, talk about the evolution of money from barter to gold, and then, to the fiat, and the problems that Bitcoin wants to solve. And of course, I showed him the inflation simulator we built proudly at African Bitcoiners. I'll get to that. That moment actually stayed with me, and it made me reflect, and I understood that exposure is not understanding. A lot of people are exposed to Bitcoin, but they don't understand Bitcoin. They get it as this crypto, that goes up and then comes down, but like the problem it is meant to solve, they don't know. And it's usually because of the language that we use to explain it to people. So now language becomes a barrier, and it becomes like an adoption tax, right? Sometimes we meet people in underserved regions and we're talking about hash rates, nodes, cryptography. Like, meanwhile, what people want to hear or need to know is, what is money? Why does it fail? And why Bitcoin exists in the first place. Back to the inflation simulator. It's actually a tool we have at African Bitcoiners. You can, what it does is that you can you can choose any African currency and impute any amount, and then you'll be able to compare, if you had saved in that currency compared to Bitcoin, how much will that be worth? And in our meetups, actually, this is one of the sessions that we see people getting engaged very well, because it now hits home for them. They begin to understand the reality. Like, okay, so inflation is real. If I had saved just my little 100,000 naira, I probably would have had 1 million naira now if I had saved in Bitcoin. So when people see the problem, ideology actually disappears. And when in the underserved regions, really, when people begin to understand Bitcoin now, the fear sort of like changes. Maybe we think people are just only afraid of Bitcoin being a Ponzi scheme, or being scammed and stuff like that. Meanwhile, the fear is evolving to the fear of being left out. You hear common complaints like, what this certain American is buying hundreds of Bitcoin, or this company is buying 600 Bitcoins and stuff like that. What would actually be left for us? And then you have to do the whole explaining about scarcity and just how owning a little would be valuable in the long run. So it's actually something that is quite surprising. I had a wake-up call, or I had a very humbling experience during the African Bitcoin conference last year. So I went to buy a bag very close to the venue where the event was happening. And I asked the woman, I said, "Do you accept Bitcoin?" Because I had no Mauritian rupees. And she said, "Bitcoin? What is Bitcoin?" I was like, "What is Bitcoin?" And then she was like, yeah, what is Bitcoin? And then I started explaining, and when I got to, and I said crypto, then she got it. She was like, oh, no, 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 like that thing that goes up and comes down, they don't do it. I don't know why I was disappointed, because maybe I felt like, because it was happening very close to, the venue, I would expect that maybe they do accept Bitcoin. Then fast forward to me going back home in the airports. I also passed through, a store in the airport. I have no Mauritian rupees, of course, and then I asked the attendant, I want to get this. Do you guys accept Bitcoin? The same question. What is Bitcoin? And I was so frustrated at that point, because I was from the highs of the conference, when we talked about adoption and all of that. And I was thinking, if really the way we feel about adoption is actually how it is, shouldn't the airports be a reflection of that? Like, the airports are like a touch point for different people from different countries. And Bitcoin, be the idea of this, global money, should actually reflect by the adoption actually happening in the airports. So I was like frustrated, and I had to leave. But my frustration actually, transformed to humility, because it just meant that there's a lot of work for us to do beyond the hype. So usually, during our meetups or bootcamps, one of the places or one of the sessions that we have the most engagement is when we start demoing how you can send Bitcoin and the person receive it in fiat, literally. It becomes less abstract and it becomes real for people. People warm up to the idea. You see them really, really excited. Shout out to, to initiatives like Tando and Mavape, of course, that we use to, to do those demos. And it shows that it's not like people, especially in the underserved regions, don't want to, don't want to open up to Bitcoin. But the problem is utility. Sometimes, also, when people want to orange pill, especially people from the, from the West, you send someone Bitcoin, but then that becomes a problem, because there is no way around him. There is no way he can spend that Bitcoin. And he probably has to go and set up, an account with an exchange in probably one of those exchanges, and then probably get scammed, in the P2P. And now you've lost that person. So initiatives like Mavape and the rest are actually very, very important for adoption in the underserved regions. Another realization that we had is that, having a lot of women in the ecosystem opens up possibilities that we've never thought about. Again, I was a mentor at a hackathon last year, and I happened to be a judge. And one of the final projects it's an all-women hackathon actually, and one of the final projects of the ladies is rather surprising. They were trying to build a breast milk bank. Like, it might sound cringe, but like literally, like one of the participants, her aunt is not able to produce enough breast milk for her baby, and they are thinking the way they can solve that problem, of course, and in those regions, just relying on baby formula to feed your kid might just lead to stigmatization. Like, why are you relying on just baby formula for a baby? So they are thinking of having a bank where people that can actually lactate very well can go donate that breast milk. But now this is the most important part. They get paid in Bitcoin. Why Bitcoin? Because it is private. Because for a woman to go and donate breast milk, that opens her to like a lot of ridicule and like stigma and all of that. But having that idea of private money being paid without actually revealing your identity is very, very important. I would have never thought about this as a man. But like, because it is women, they understand their own problems and they can build solutions around that if we educate them in Bitcoin. So we need more women-led initiatives, especially in the underserved regions. That would open up possibilities that we've not thought about. I've heard so many talks about, whether people should save or whether people should either they should save or they should spend and stuff. But I think based on our own observations and my own, I think we need more income tools. We need more tools in underserved regions that help people earn Bitcoin first before they can save Bitcoin. You orange pill someone, but they don't have what to save. You're talking about them saving, but they don't even have what to save. So it's very important that in those regions we concentrate on building around how can we help these people, like how can we help people earn before we actually let them save. And I think initiatives like Bitcoin Dua and the rest are doing something like that, and it's very important. So gatherings like this actually attract people that already agree and they already believe, and and things like that. But if we don't escape these bubbles, we kind of mistake reflections for reach. On the ground, Bitcoin is still misunderstood. Bitcoin is still often even seen as irrelevant, and there's just a lot of work to do. I'm not saying that Bitcoin is failing in Africa, far from it, but different communities actually need different tools. The enthusiasm is there. People show up in meetups, in bootcamps, hoping that Bitcoin will be that escape for them. And the responsibility is ours to actually do what is right, to use the right methods. So, but I think for Bitcoin to work in the underserved regions, it has to show up differently. It first has to be useful before it is ideological. It has to help people earn before it demands them to save. And it has to be built by locals. It has to be built locally by people who live the problems that Bitcoin is meant to solve. And that is the path we are walking at African Bitcoiners and Africa Free Routing. We've done this, we are doing our 10th bootcamp now, and we've done some meetups, taking Bitcoin to the underground, to people that actually deserve it, to people that don't know about it. So if this is something you like to work, and of course with the support of our very good partners like BTrust and HRF and all of that. So if this is a path that you want to walk, if you think Bitcoin should work for the people in the underserved regions, you can reach out to Sarah, myself, or you can scan the QR code to download our sponsorship deck. The people actually need it, and Africa needs it. And the work is already out there to be done. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank